and candidates who are here today. We're excited to host this forum. And I just want to say that now more than ever, local journalism is incredibly important. And as Evanston prepares for its upcoming elections, the Daily Northwestern, the Evanston Roundtable, and Where the People Meet TV are really dedicated to providing accurate and engaging and transparent coverage. So we're really looking forward to this forum today and getting to talk about and ask questions about the issues that matter the most to Evanston.
The stakes are definitely high right now. And across the country, we see things shifting in policy, in power, in leadership. And Evanston is the same thing. We have a lot of shifting taking place. And some people see it as progress, and they're excited for what's to come. And then others see this shifting as a serious concern. So whether you agree with it or you don't agree, you support, you don't support, the point is it's leadership that matters. It matters. And this property that we're on right now, the history of this property, think about the leadership. Black families lived on this property. They had homes. It was the leadership back in what, 1930? 1929. The leadership decided they wanted this land. So they literally picked up the houses from the ground and moved them to the 5th Ward. That's how powerful leadership is. That's how powerful it is. And that's how powerful elections are. Because guess what? It can happen again. Might be happening right now, it just doesn't look the same. So we gotta pay attention. We gotta stay engaged. We gotta stay informed. And so I thank my media crew, friends here, Heidi Rondova helping us out, my partner in crime, Don here, Percy, my mom, everybody, and all of you for coming out, because you could have been at the Super Bowl, watching the Super Bowl. But you put Evanston first, and that speaks volumes, and I thank you. So listen closely to all the candidates, the questions, and we will be coming out to get questions from you to ask the candidates. And thank you to the candidates. They're all coming at their different times. Thank you for all you do, and thank you for coming to take the tough questions from the panelists and the residents. Thank you so much. So we're going to get started and get this ball rolling.
For sure.
All right, thank you. And we're going to start with the 7th Ward, Kerry Mundy and Parielle Davis. Welcome them to the stage. All right, before we fire off the questions, if you both want to take just 30 seconds to tell everyone who you are.
Yeah, so, it's not your mic properly? Okay, can you hear me now? Yeah?
It's that mic up there that's actually picking you up.
Okay. All right. My name is Parielle Davis. I'm running to represent Evanston 7th Ward because our ward needs a representative who listens, engages, and takes action based on community input. Unlike my opponent, I have a history as a community organizer who listens to the broader community, not just special interests. I also have the background to do this effectively. I am an attorney and a software engineer, and my entire background and training is in analyzing data, understanding laws, and finding solutions focused on policy. I'm ready to bring fresh leadership and a solutions-oriented approach to City Council, and I hope to earn your support.
Can't hear you.
No, it's not hard enough.
Put it next to your mouth.
Well, I can speak pretty loudly, so I don't actually know that I need it very much. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Kerry Mundy. Before we begin, I'd just like to say and recognize the fact, for the first time in history, no matter who prevails here, the 7th Ward will be represented by an American African candidate for the first time in history. It represents a turning point for the ward and a turning point for Evanston, giving, as we discussed, as Melissa mentioned, the redlining history of our city. So who am I and why am I running? I'm running because I believe in the hope of Evanston. I believe in all the good that Evanston has to offer, and I think that's where we start. I think there's a lot that works here, and it's not all bad. I think that everyone in this room is invested in our community. We can make things better, but we should recognize that things are not so terrible to begin with. I think our leaders should have financial sense, business sense, and common sense, and I like to think that I have all three. Of the two candidates, I'm the one who served in federal capacity, handled national security for the second most powerful senator in the United States. At the time, the chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, Dick Lugar. He was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom from Barack Obama. I've served at the municipal level under Mayor Daley. And that's all after having been a former naval officer. My life is about service. I see Evanston as being a community that is worthy of the time and attention, and I'm happy to give up. Thank you.
It's okay to respond, clap, like what, it's fine to have a reaction to what's going on here. So the first question, none of us are going to throw out. The first question, they're going to ask each other a question. And our timekeeper is Heidi Rondova. And so you have 60 seconds to respond to your opponent's question. So,
Who goes first? Going alphabetical order.
how about ladies first?
When asked why you signed the petition in favor of the commercialization of Ryan Field, you said that you did so because your neighbor told you to. How often do you adopt others' opinions instead of forming your own?
So the comment that I made about signing a petition for Ryan Field was that a neighbor asked me. No one tells me, as a 50-year-old man, former naval officer and father of a family, to do anything. I make my own decisions and I have my own will. The fact of the matter is I have a very close neighbor who was very strongly in favor of Ryan Field, and he asked me to do both sign a petition and have a yard start signed in my yard. And the reality is, I told him, you know what, I'm pretty much in the middle. I believe that Ryan Field, it's been here before, it'll be here after, it needs to be rebuilt. Fine, I'll sign the petition, but no yard sign. And that's where we left it. No one tells me to do anything. If I believe in the cause, the mission, the goal, then I'm happy to get on board. No? Can I just end my 60 seconds by saying the inserted animosity in this conversation really makes no sense. I think I'd like to say that being American African is we should both be not only civil but professional and respectful of each other. I know my mother would be disappointed if I got up here and was antagonistic. So.
Your tone sounds that way though, so I'm not sure
Very much.
how you refrain.
My tone sounds like a military officer.
This isn't a military area though.
My turn? Okay, so mine is a lot less difficult. The reality is in my office I have on the wall a document that I wrote probably about 20 years ago. It's my mission statement that lists my values and how prioritized they are and what really matters and makes me me. So the question I have for you is, what is your highest personal value? Mine's authenticity. I don't say things I don't believe in. I don't do things I don't believe in. What is your highest personal value?
My highest personal value is to live and act in a way in which I feel that I will be able to say that I do not have any regrets based on my actions, my interactions with people, and I generally do that. I'll also say, what I think is a little bit more relevant is what do I think my characteristics or values should be as a representative for the 7th Ward. And with regards to that, I think it is listening to the community. So being responsive, not assuming that I know more than other people who are experts in their field. If I ever have a question about the military as it applies to running our municipal city, I will be sure to ask you. I don't think it'll come up, but if it does, I will. And in the same capacity, we have a lot of people in the audience who are experts in many different fields. We have arborists, we have civil engineers, and my expectation and plan is when these people come to me, I intend to listen and come at it with a humble attitude and understanding that I can always learn something.
Hello, everyone. This is Alex Harrison, Evanston Roundtable. Happy to be here as a panelist. So starting off with our questions, the north of Evanston in particular has come up very frequently during the Envision Evanston process as far as what new zoning controls should be in place, especially since the 6th and 7th Ward are primarily single-family neighborhoods. So kind of a two-part question. In a broad sense, what is your vision for the 7th Ward over the next 20 years? And then more specifically, what do you believe would be an appropriate density to allow throughout the residential parts of the neighborhood? You each have 90 seconds, starting with you, Ms. Davis.
Yeah, so, there are things that I think that we can improve on and things that we do right. I've mentioned before that what I really appreciate about Evanston is that we have a good amount of diversity by every metric. We have good racial diversity, we have good socioeconomic diversity, and I think that we have good housing diversity. When arguments regarding, when people have been pushing for getting rid of single-family zoning, it's based on national trends where, I was talking to someone who said that the state of California, you can fact check me on this, of course, has 90% single-family housing. We only have 31%. So when we adopt and consider the ways to address some of the problems that are happening nationally, we have to adjust them to think of how the demographics of our city and what our city in particular needs. And I do think that we need more affordable housing, but it's going to look different, and the tactics that we take will come out in a different way. I also think that when we talk about the future of our city, one of the things that draws a lot of people here are our schools. And so when we talk about what we need to focus on, it might be finding ways to support our schools and make sure that there's a closer relationship between the city of Evanston and our schools, and how that applies to zoning, and how those decisions impact what we have the property taxes to do with regards to affordable housing, but also what we can do with regards to transportation and making public transit more accessible. Yeah.
So with regards to Envision Evanston and the zoning proposal, I think in the 7th Ward it became fairly clear fairly early that single-family homeowners felt blindsided, and they felt that while Evanston has a big heart, that wasn't necessarily the lever to pull in order to engage and resolve the question that we were trying to answer. I very early, in fact being the first candidate that I'm aware of, other than Ms. Kelly, who noted and went to the mayor and asked him, what exactly will this plan deliver? And the reality is it won't yield the density that we're talking about. It will change the character of the neighborhood. I can't tell you exactly what that plan will be for 20 years, but I can tell you that my vision is that zoning is a piece of the answer, but not the entire answer. I think that on more of a case-by-case, area-by-area basis, we need to certainly deal with zoning issues, but in a way that co-locates zoning reform with mass transit, with areas that need to be redeveloped. I don't believe that taking a large market to the zoning code was or is the proper approach. My vision for the 7th Ward would, by and large, be what the 7th Ward wants. And I think there are places where we can add density, but they need to be looked at very seriously. And I think that the single-family homeowners who chose that lifestyle, who chose and pay property taxes, and worked hard to buy their homes, deserve to be heard when they say that they don't want something else happening in their neighborhood. I am in favor of density. It took my wife and I, for our family, a very long time to buy our home. And thank you.
You have 10 seconds to wrap it up.
All that to say, it took a long time and it was very difficult. So we understand what it means to aspire and for housing to be difficult. We worked very hard for a very long time. So we get it, but reform has to be done smart.
We can't hear the question.
He's working on the mic. Absolutely.
Okay, here we go. I'm Sean Graves, I'm the city editor of the Daily Northwestern. And I, just kind of bouncing off of that Envision Evanston question, the rezoning is set to come up to the city council by August, if the current timeline holds. There's been a lot of talk about housing, of course, but I want to touch on the commercial zones, because Central Street is such a backbone for the 7th Ward. The rezoning could allow for much larger buildings, more development, lots of different things. When you have a seat on the city council, what would you say in terms of what you would like to see in terms of business and in terms of zoning for that Central Street corridor? You have 60 seconds to respond.
Yeah, so I've met with maybe about 6 or 7 of the business owners on Central Street, and one of the things that I love about Central Street is that it's actually doing very well, especially compared to the downtown area. And I think that the most important thing that we can do is just continue to support the businesses in that area. As it applies to zoning, I think that we have to take a responsive approach and listen to the residents. I actually have not heard for much of a push for increased density in that area from the small business owners or from the residents. And instead, I've heard a lot more focus on being better with our small businesses and supporting them better. So reducing the complications regarding our permitting process, relooking at our parking, and then also reconsidering the way that we evaluate our property taxes in that area. Also, just generally being responsive. I can't tell you how many times I've heard small business owners they've emailed the city asking very simple questions and gotten no response. But as it applies to the zoning, I actually don't see that much cause for much change in that particular area, especially on Central Street. It's already commercial, so.
I think Central Street is one of the wonderful places in Evanston. I've talked to the Central Street SSA and met with many business owners, and all of whom don't really ask or seek more density to my knowledge. The question that they always have is, how can we increase our business? How can we get more people into our stores, into our facilities, and how can we make it easier for them to enjoy what it is that we're offering? That deals with parking. Some of the small business owners have a really difficult time just having a place for their staff to park. So your question deals with zoning, and I think there are particular places on a case-by-case basis where zoning reform can be done and more density can be added to the benefit of Central Street. But in talking to the SSA and talking to those business owners, what they seek really is the low-hanging fruit of a strong relationship with the university, being a part of the Ryan Field build-out, and allows them to take part in all of that that's coming. And I think that's an important thing, an important place to start when we talk about making Central Street better. I echo the concerns, and I've heard the concerns of working with the city government, and it's gotten much, much better. But the reality is the perception of a small business owner working in Evanston and starting a business is that it's more difficult than other places on the North Shore. Other places on the North Shore are offering incentives that really reduce the risk significantly to an entrepreneur. So I think we have to make Evanston stronger first, and then we can worry about the density issue.
Hi, I'm Duncan Agnew from the Roundtable as well. Going into the Northwestern question a little bit deeper, what do you think of the current status of the Ryan Field construction project and how that's gone so far? And in that lens, how would you approach your relationship with Northwestern as a council member? You have 90 seconds.
I have the mic, so I'll just go ahead and get started. I think I'm the first to say that I believe that the relationship between the city, and particularly the neighborhood, and Northwestern has handled it heavy-handedly. I believe and have said on my website, and I say it often, that relationship should be built on a foundation of mutual respect. The property owners in that neighborhood have a right to expect that they can put their children to sleep at night without overt concert noise. They have a right to expect that they can be able to park in front of their homes. At the same time, I think Ryan Field was there before. It is being rebuilt. It will be a vibrant part of the city. We need to find a mutually understanding agreement and tone that allows us to do business and make things as right as possible for the greatest number of people. I don't think that all questions can be answered, and I'll never pretend to be all things to all people. But the fact of the matter is that my approach to dealing with Northwestern, and it already has been, I've had a conversation with President Schill and let him know that should I win, it will be a new day, and we'll start anew in conversations and tone and mutual respect. That's where we begin. My hope is to represent all of the interests of the neighborhood and 7th Ward residents and making Evanston the kind of college town that I think it can be. We can be one of the best college towns in America, but it will never happen when there's so much antagonism, sometimes rightful antagonism, that needs to be mellowed out and resolved so that we can start at a fresh point and move forward. Thanks very much.
So I think that the construction, it is what it is. Construction's always messy. It's been a mess. I've heard small complaints of people trying to reach out to Northwestern to make sure that they handle it a little bit more respectfully. And I do think that there is still some type of contention regarding the rebuild. As we move forward, what I think is most important actually is that it has been disheartening in the past to see how much residents have had to push. And on the, maybe even to Northwestern's point that they've had to interact directly with residents because of a lack of responsiveness from City Council and an unwillingness to get involved in the messy compromise that needed to be made. And when we talk about terrible town-gown relationship, what it comes from is a lack of transparency and how that feels on the residents' part, where they feel as if they are being pushed out of the decision-making process. And it's concerning when City Council members say that. So what I think going forward is that if we want to improve our town-gown relationships, we have to improve our relationship as City Council members with the residents and come into that with an open heart and being in willingness to compromise and listen, even if it means hearing the same thing over and over again, and recognizing that our job is actually as an arbiter in between the university and the residents, and making sure that we are fighting to make sure we get the best that we can for the residents at the end of the day. Because at the end of the day, the university is a corporation, largely composed, ironically, of residents, and what we want to do is what's best for the city. I personally feel as if I'm being elected by people, not a corporation, and so that's who I
Okay, we're going to take a couple questions from the audience. Get my workout today.
Ms. Davis, in a letter to the Roundtable in December, you described Envision Evanston 2045 as a mercenary agenda clothed in a progressive disguise. My question is, do you still stand by that statement? And I would ask both of you, what is your stance regarding the April 1st approval deadline of Envision Evanston 2045, which has encountered a lot of well-informed, serious criticism? They've fired their consultant. It's a mess. And if you're really concerned about affordable housing, we want to get this right. We don't want to rush this through so the mayor can have his trophy. What would you say?
Here.
Thank you.
So in the interest of understanding that I do not know everything, I did reach out to Connections for Homeless and we had a brief conversation. And one of the things that they mentioned, and I'd heard from other people, was that Evanston was supposed to develop a strategic housing plan and it was supposed to be done in December of 2024. And so the reason that I feel, and it was not, let me be clear, it did not get completed. And the reason that I made that statement is because if we actually cared about affordable housing, instead of trying to push through this comprehensive plan and these zoning changes and pretending as if it was about affordable housing, the literal plan that was meant to address affordable housing would have been completed. And so the other reason that I believe that it was a mercenary, mission is because I've asked representatives from the city and, from special interest groups, how many affordable housing units do we need? And they told me high. They told me a lot, but they had no real goal. You cannot pursue anything in this life without an actual goal. Otherwise, you're just messing around. Whenever I aspire to do anything, I pick some type of quantitative goal, and that could be because I have a business background. I've worked in a corporate space. I can tell you that in corporate spaces that does not fly. And if there's any point in which we should be trying to adopt more business practices, I would say it's in this realm. As it currently stands, you make great points. The city staff themselves have said that the consultants have underperformed. So I do not believe that we can push through the comprehensive plan. We obviously need to reevaluate the plan and our approach. And I do think that the April timeline is optimistic. And if I would say unreasonable.
So, just as the city council has done, I think you have to separate Envision Evanston from the zoning proposal. To my mind, the Envision Evanston document is representative of Evanston and is an aspirational document. It is, we have big hearts who want to do big things moving forward and be done by the year 2045. In that vein, I think that we're on the right track. I think that there's some representation of what Evanston wants in that document. As we've belabored already, the zoning portion of that proposal is not up to snuff. And I think and agree that the consultants that are working with the city, one of my strongest priorities if elected will be to reduce the amount of consultancies that we bring into city questions. We are a community that is probably per capita one of the most intelligent in the country. We have Northwestern professors and lots of smart people who are accomplished in their domains. I would propose something that I'll call the Evanston Academies, that is not-for-profit folks with large backgrounds and expertise who can lend themselves to questions and help the city get where it wants to go without spending hundreds of thousands of dollars. To answer the question of the April 1st date, I think in terms of zoning, that date needs to be fungible based on the details. The reality is the plan that was delivered and asked of the Land Use Commission to vote on that they hadn't actually seen is a bad way of doing business. And I think that does go back to the consulting issue. I think that Envision Evanston is representative in the sense that we want to do really good things for a lot of people. I think we're right on that. On the zoning piece, we need to be slow but steady. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much to our 7th Ward candidates, Parielle Davis and Kerry Mundy. You want to take 30 seconds to leave them with a thought, and we're going to move back to the 8th Ward, Devon Reed, so you're on deck. Okay, 30 seconds.
As of the last campaign filing, my opponent's donations have come from less than a handful of donors that were closely linked to Field of Opportunities, while mine have come from over 70 individual donors. I think that speaks to real grassroots support. Beyond my leadership with MLCA and beyond what I've been doing as a community organizer, I run a nonprofit dedicated to assisting Black families in Evanston and people who are new parents. I put out maternity boxes. I've worked for the NAACP in the past. As I've mentioned, I have a legal background, I'm a software engineer, I have 2 young kids. I think that by many metrics, I am very qualified and I would bring a very unique, fresh perspective to City Council.
In closing, I'll start by saying there's the notion of painting me as being in the pocket of Northwestern or largely affiliated with Northwestern. I'm not. I am an Evanstonian. The fact of the matter is Northwestern is good for Evanston and Evanston is good for Northwestern, and that's how we should look at it. The difference in this election, you've heard some commonalities between our points of view. The reality is the difference is experience. I have, over the course of my career, 20 extra years of experience in dealing with federal issues, municipal issues that I can lend to the party. It's a difference of approach, if you will. Mine is one where you have to be in the room in order to make things happen, and that doesn't happen through antagonism. I'm hopeful. I believe in Evanston. I believe in all the good that we have here, and I'd like to be a part of that solution. Thank you.